Let me ask you a question. Let's say you had to get a very complicated, very risky brain surgery. You don't know any brain surgeons, but you can pick any surgeon you want. What do? How do you decide? Well, first, you make sure the surgeon is a brain surgeon, not a heart surgeon. Next, you make sure they're licensed, certified. Next, you might look at their success scores. How successful are they? Do a lot of their patients die or have ongoing problems? You might want to talk with the former patients of this doctor. Okay, so you'll spend hours doing this research. And why? Because you want the assurance that you're getting a doctor you can trust. It's called due diligence. We do it when it comes to our doctors. But what about our spiritual guides? What shocks me most about Seventh-day Adventists is how few of them have bothered to investigate Ellen White. Most haven't done any due diligence. They bought the corporate line that she's a prophet and they never questioned it. Or they grew up in a church and just never thought to question it. They heard stories, about her doing miracles, making prophecies, and they never checked the accuracy of those stories. They read books like Desire of Ages and conclude, well, it's such a great book, she must have been a prophet. And why do SDAs only turn to other SDAs to find out information about Ellen White? Why don't they turn to independent people who aren't biased, who aren't part of the SDA corporation? We perform due diligence in selecting a physician because our life is on the line, but what about our spiritual life? Making a wrong decision in our spiritual life can have huge negative ramifications. It can affect your identity, your core values, your relationships with others, your understanding of God and salvation. It can affect how you spend your time, your money. It can affect your health, your happiness. If you get on board the wrong spiritual boat, it could end up in a shipwreck. On this video, I'm going to show you the 7 biblical tests of a prophet. Not fake tests that anyone can pass. I'm talking about the real tests. And we're going to start doing our due diligence on Ellen White. These are factual, evidence-based tests. Don't base your faith on an emotion or the word of someone else. Base it on the facts, the evidence. The evidence I'll present to you today will prove that Ellen White failed most, if not all, of the biblical tests of a prophet. So let's begin. Test number 1 is found in Deuteronomy 18:22. When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken, but the prophet hath spoken it presumptuously, thou shalt not be afraid of him. Now, any prophet can get lucky and make a guess about the future, which by chance comes to pass. Therefore, the Bible doesn't say a true prophet is someone who makes 1 or 2 vague predictions about the future that just happen to come true. The Bible places a much more stringent test upon a prophet. Moses told the people, you got to keep score. If the prophet ever fails, even once, then ignore him. He's not a true prophet. Why? Because anyone can make a lucky guess. But only God can get the future right every single time. That's what differentiates God's prophets from all the other false prophets in the world. God's prophets are correct about the future 100% of the time. In examining some of the predictions made by Ellen White, it's evident she badly failed this test. Most of Mrs. White's specific predictions were made early in her career, and virtually every one of them failed. She eventually learned her lesson. As she got older, her predictions became more vague, such as crime will worsen, cities will be more polluted, the earth will become more and more corrupt. I mean, come on. A child could make predictions like that. Now let me show you some of her false predictions. Now remember to keep score, because a true prophet of God will never make a false prediction. Not even one. First failure. Lucinda Burdick and Ellen Harmon were close friends during the mid-1840s. Mrs. Burdick, the wife of a pastor, had many opportunities to hear Mrs. White's prophecies. And the following is her eyewitness testimony of a prophecy Mrs. White made. Quote, "During the year 1845, I met Miss Ellen G. Harmon several times at my uncle's house in South Windham, Maine. The first of these meetings was in the month of May, when I heard her declare that God had revealed to her that Jesus Christ would return to this earth in June, the next month." Okay, Ellen Harmon said God revealed to her that Jesus would come in June of 1845. Well, he didn't. This is a failed prophecy. Already I know she's not a true prophet. Let's go on. Let's look at another one. Mrs. Burdick testifies again. "During the haying season, I again met her in company with James White at the same place and heard my uncle ask her about the failure of the Lord to appear in June according to her visions. She replied that she had been told in the language of Canaan, which she did not understand, but that she had since come to understand that Christ would return in September at the second growth of grass instead of the first." All right, language problem, but she got it figured out. September 1845. Did Jesus return? Obviously not. Now we could stop here knowing that according to Daniel 18:22, we have nothing to fear from this prophet. She has proven herself a false prophet. She doesn't speak for God. But let's be careful. The Bible says not to accept anything on the voice of just one witness. So can Mrs. Burdick's story be corroborated? Well, the answer is yes. Mrs. White made several statements about the imminent return of Christ that corroborate Mrs. Burdick's statements. In the early days of her prophetic career, Mrs. White had a bad habit of falsely predicting the return of Christ. Let's look at this next statement. In 1850, here's what Sister White wrote that her angel told her. Quote, "My accompanying angel said, 'Time is almost finished. Get ready, get ready, get ready. Now time is almost finished. And what we have been years learning, they will have to learn in a few months.'" In other words, new converts to Adventism will have to learn their doctrines in a few months. Why? Because time is almost finished. Now, the reduction in learning time is not because new converts are smarter than the old ones. It's not because the Adventists developed an accelerated learning course. The angel says the reason is they'll have to learn in months. It's because time is almost finished. Well, what's a reasonable definition of the phrase "a few months"? 3? 5? Webster's dictionary says few is amounting to only a small number. Well, now it's been 2,088 months at the making of this video since Mrs. White said only a few months remained. Not years, not decades, not centuries. She said months. It appears the angel lied to her. The new converts, they had more than months to learn. They had their entire lifetimes to learn. They had years and decades to learn SDA doctrines. They had enough time to get their master's degree and their PhD in theology. Now, we know that God's angels don't lie. So whatever angel told her, that certainly wasn't God's angel. And we know Satan is a liar and the father of lies. Sounds to me like she was listening to Satan's angel. Listen, we've got a dozen other failed prophecies in my book, Prophet or Pretender. I'm giving away for free on Amazon Kindle. Do yourself a favor, do some due diligence, and get that book. Okay, no doubt she failed test number 1. Now let's take a look at test number 2 in Jeremiah 23:32. "Behold, I am against them that prophesy false dreams, saith the Lord, and do tell them, and cause my people to err by their lies, and by their lightness. Yet I sent them not, nor commanded them, Therefore they shall not profit this people at all, saith the Lord. Okay, a prophet cannot speak falsehoods from their visions. There are instances where Ellen White prophesied falsehoods that caused her people to err. One is the shut door. People ask, why make such a big deal about Ellen White's shut door visions? I'll tell you why. Because they were false. Look what Otis Nichols wrote. Now, Otis Nichols, this dude was a fervent believer in Ellen White. He wrote, her message was that our work was done for the nominal church and the world, and what remained to be done was for the household of faith. A household of faith being other Adventists. That was her message. A false message. Their work wasn't done for the world. In fact, later on, after they realized the shut door teaching was false, SDAs sent missionaries all over the world. But Ellen White, at the beginning, taught a false doctrine from her visions. An Adventist minister, Isaac Welcome, saw her in vision. Look at his testimony. I was often in meeting with Ellen G. Harmon and James White in 1844 and 45. I several times caught her while falling on the floor, at times when she swooned away for a vision. I have heard her relate her visions of these dates. Several were published on sheets to the effect that all were lost who did not endorse the 44 move, that's the Millerite movement, that Christ had left the throne of mercy, and all were sealed that ever would be, and no others could repent. Now, she later denied having visions about a shut door of salvation for the world. But here's the problem for Ellen White. Too many people heard it from her own lips. And not only that, she wrote about it in 1847. Let's look at this. Let's look at this vision. Quote, others rashly denied the light behind them and said it was not God that had led them out so far. Okay, these are people who gave up and left the Adventists, went back to the other churches. She says the light behind them went out, leaving their feet in perfect darkness, and they stumbled and got their eyes off the mark and lost sight of Jesus and fell off the path down in the dark and wicked world below. It was just as impossible for them to get on the path again and go to the city as all the wicked world which God had rejected. It was impossible for the world to get back on the path. Now look in 1849, a couple years later, she wrote about the condition of other churches. Here's her angel again. My accompanying angel bade me look for the travail of soul for sinners as used to be. I looked, but I could not see it, for the time for their salvation is past. The sinners, the world, could not be salvaged. They were lost. Their time was past. The door was shut. She saw it in vision. It looks like the same lying angel came back and told her the time for salvation is past. Listen, this is a dismal failure. For 7 years, she led the Adventists down a delusional path. Finally, in 1851, they gave up the shut door doctrine, and then they tried to pretend like they never taught it. James had to go and delete a bunch of Ellen's words when he republished her visions in 1851. What a scam. Listen, she made many other failures. Get my book, Prophet or Pretender, free on Kindle. So she failed test number 2. What about number 3? The Bible identifies false prophets as those who steal their writings from others. Let's look at Jeremiah 23, verses 25 and 30. I have not sent these prophets, yet they ran. I have not spoken to them, yet they prophesied. Therefore, behold, I am against the prophets, saith the Lord, that steal my words, every one from his neighbor. This is that whole plagiarism issue. And I don't care whether you label it copying or plagiarism. The bottom line is, she copied tons of words from her neighbors. And oh, by the way, the people she copied from were the same people she said were Babylon and apostate Protestantism. Listen, they don't even deny it anymore. Warren Johns of the White Estate made the following statement: evidence for literary borrowing can be substantiated in virtually all 9 volumes of the Testimonies for the Church, in her Review and Herald and Signs of the Times articles, and in all of the books published during her lifetime. All the books published during her lifetime. The only exception may be early writings. At this time, I'm not aware of any significant literary borrowing in that work, but it would not be surprising if it should come to light. They admit it. Now, some of them say, well, God told her what to copy. Are you serious? He told her to do what he said not to do? That's a lame defense. God didn't tell her to do what he said not to do. Besides, she copied historical errors into books like Great Controversy. She copied a bunch of false things about health into her health reform writings, such as masturbation causes blindness. Did God tell her to copy that? I don't think so. If I had to guess, I'd say it was that same lying angel. If you want to see more, get my book, or get Walter Ray's book, White Lie. You can read the whole book on our website. Do your due diligence. There's no doubt she failed test number 3. No doubt at all. Let's see, that's 0 out of 3 so far, not doing too well. Let's go on to test number 4. It's in Isaiah 8:20. To the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. Now, there's so many Bible contradictions. I don't have time to tell you all of them. Let's look at one. We're going to look at one. I'm going to read 3 quotes from Ellen White. Satan, who is the father of lies, deceived Adam in a similar way, telling him that he need not obey God, that he would not die if he transgressed the law. She says, Satan deceived Adam. Next quote, Adam believed the lie of Satan. Third quote, Eve yielded to temptation, and through her influence, Adam also was deceived. Got it? 3 times she tells us Adam was deceived by Satan. Well, what does the Bible say? 1 Timothy 2:14, and Adam was not the one deceived. It was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. Listen, this is the tip of the iceberg. I've got tons more. Go to our website. Be diligent. She failed test number 4. Test number 5. Jesus said in Matthew 7:15-16, Beware of false prophets. You shall know them by their fruits. Now, I'll never sit here and tell you Ellen White did nothing good. She did do some good things. In fact, all false prophets do some good things. This verse isn't saying they never do anything good. It's just saying you'll know them by their fruit. If they have some good fruit mixed in with some poisonous fruit, well, you know that's a bad tree. Mrs. White produced some poisonous fruit. She taught the shut door of salvation for 7 years. That's a delusion. That's bad fruit. Her constant false predictions about the return of Christ deceived, misled people. Some likely made life-altering decisions based on her false prophecies. Oh, Lord's going to return in June or September. I don't need to go plant my fields. When Jesus didn't return, people were damaged spiritually, financially. Some lost faith. Others suffered financial losses. Look at her health teaching. She told parents to stop allowing their children to eat butter. But later on, they discovered that butter had essential vitamins, especially for vegetarians. So the SDA sect, they had to walk back that one. The Seventh Adventist Church itself is one of the worst fruits of her ministry. Here we have an entire denomination that believes Ellen White's dogma that all Protestant churches are fallen. And what SDAs need to do is instead of converting the lost, go out and convert all the other Christians over to accept Seventh-day Adventist doctrines before the return of Christ. Right? So instead of seeking the lost, like Jesus instructed his disciples to do, SDAs spend the vast majority of their time trying to convince other Christians to adopt their doctrines. You can see it in their budgets, what they spend money on. It's to convince other Christians. Look at their evangelistic efforts. They're targeted at other Christians. You know, the multitude of Ellen White's rules, her regulations, the burdens she placed upon people, they take much of the fun and enjoyment out of life. They turn life into a legalistic nightmare. She wrote against attending the theater, playing sports, eating meat, even having a single glass of wine, using dairy products, attending picnics, reading fiction, just about everything else that makes life enjoyable. Instead of enjoying the life God gave them, she chided her followers to spend their time and money being as obsessed as she was in spreading SDA doctrines. It's no wonder that they're called Sadventists. Many people who joined the sect and later left will tell you it was the saddest and darkest period of their life. Ellen White was anti-sex because she had this fear of arousing the animal passions and draining vital force from the body. She put limitations on sex within marriage, forbid masturbation. Some claim that God was guiding her, but was he? Think about Kellogg's cereals. She blew one of the biggest opportunities to financially bless the SDA sect. When Dr. Kellogg invented these cereals and other health foods, he offered to give the products to the SDA church. That's right, he said he would give them to the sect. Mrs. White ignored his offer and later vetoed a chance to obtain the rights to cornflakes. So Kellogg turned those products over to his brother, who made a fortune on them. Furthermore, she was a hypocrite. I've got a new book coming out. It's called The Spirit of Hypocrisy. You won't believe all the hypocrisy. Did she have poisonous fruit on the tree? You bet she did. Test number 6, found in 1 Corinthians 14:3. He who prophesies speaks to men for their upbuilding and encouragement and consolation. Now, few SDAs have gone through the mind-numbing exercise of reading all of the testimonies of Ellen White. Yes, there are a few statements, and I emphasize few, where she encouraged others. But if you read all of them, you find this incredible nitpicking, criticizing attitude throughout. She frequently tore down, discouraged, and grieved others. The general tone of her testimonies was negative, fault-finding, accusatory. Ellen White tore down and discouraged her enemies, her church members, her family, even her co-workers. She was known for her severity in dealing with church members. In her early years, she was known for harshly reprimanding people in the audience from the pulpit. Many of her testimonies use harsh, derogatory language, such as calling people worthless. At one point, she called her son Edson's life worse than useless. While some of her counsel and testimonies may be encouraging, all too often they were vindictive, discouraging, and destructive. Test number 7, also found in Corinthians. 1 Corinthians 14:37 and verses 34 to 35. If any man think himself to be a prophet or spiritual, let him acknowledge that the things that I write unto you are the commandments of the Lord. Verses 34 and 35. Let your women keep silence in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, for it is a shame for a woman to speak in the church. Here is Mrs. White speaking in the Battle Creek Tabernacle at the General Conference session in 1901. A picture is worth 1,000 words. It's obvious. Mrs. White disregarded these commandments of Paul in her life. Therefore, we can only conclude she failed this test as well. Well, that's 0 out of 7. Now, what I've shared today is an evidence-based approach. But don't trust me, do your due diligence. Go out and study this. It could save you a lot of time and a lot of trouble in the long run. If this video was helpful to you, please share it with someone else.